Welcome to Knots of Ariadne. I'm Kira, one of your co hosts. I am a life coach and master Reiki practitioner.
And I am Marguerite de la Mer, another co host. I am a Reiki master and a reader.
And we are here to enlighten you to all things spiritual and woo woo.
All things spiritual, all questions, nothing's off the table.
Yes. So let's go ahead and dive into today's episode.
And today we're going to talk about cards, Oracle and Tarot cards, how we first got into them, which decks maybe called us in the beginning, what did we feel when we purchased or received our first deck, how do you read, how do you start reading, what's the secret, is there a secret, and we'll just go over a few cards, a few tarot or oracle cards that we kind of like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, cartomancy was one of the first things that drew me in. Like I did like the gemstones and crystals; those were a lot of fun too. But cartomancy really kind of like magnetized me to them. I wanted to know more about how I could tell things about people or channel messages with the cards.
Yeah, and I have kind of the same thing that happened to me. Crystals was one of the first things that brought me into an actual spiritual store. And I don't know why. Crystals are just fun.
They are.
They're fun. They're pretty. They're easy to collect. But then the second thing, like you, was I wanted to buy a deck of cards. My experience was I felt like I was doing something bad because I had been raised my whole life I had been taught that tarot reading was evil and that cards were bad and that you could accidentally summon a demon or something. So
right? Yes. I've heard that.
So it was a big deal for me. I took a long time to pick out my first deck.
Mm-hmm. See, I don't remember ever being necessarily told that they were bad. I mean, I grew up in the Christian church and I took myself to church most days, but I don't remember like specifically hearing or seeing much about them except for like in movies. To me, it was always the Ouija board. Oh, don't touch the Ouija board. That's bad. That's bad. But yeah, when I first started kind of learning a little bit about them and seeing a little bit about them, it just drew me like how the images and everything in the cards could tell a story and give you insight into your life.
So had you had a reading before you got your first deck, or did you see something on YouTube, or did you just happen to see them in the store?
I did not have a reading. No. I just saw them. Actually, so okay, my very first deck I was online and I purchased an astrology report and I got a deck of cards for free. A little mini one, kind of like yours right here.
Oh.
For free, slightly bigger than that, from the company, the astrology company.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first deck. And so I just started kind of playing around with them. And like, then one day I was like, I should probably figure out what these mean. So then I just started like going online and like searching, like, what does this card mean? What does this card mean?
Was it a tarot deck?
It was a tarot deck.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was similar to the traditional Rider-Waite, like it had the same imagery, but it wasn't like exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How did you get your first deck?
So I had gotten a reading from a medium, so I knew that cards were used in mediumship, and obviously you grew up kind of knowing what tarot is from movies.
Mm-hmm.
But I went into a crystal shop here in Omaha. I spent a lot of time, probably what seemed like 30 minutes or so, looking through different decks at this shop, and ended up picking the first one I had picked up anyways. So it was the Oracle card deck. Bought it, came home, started reading the book, started learning about it. I did meet up with a friend, Anna, here in town, who is also a reader. And she read me, and I kind of learned how to read with her, and we did an exchange. So, but it took me a while to get the hang of it. It really did.
It really does.
Especially since the deck I had gotten was very general. and very spiritual, and it was an oracle deck, which are also more general, I feel.
Yeah, yeah. They cover kind of a broad overview of the situation, I feel like.
Yeah.
They can be great in some ways, but like if you want the meat and potatoes, that's where I turn to my tarot cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like using my oracle cards when I'm looking at like the general theme of the month or the overall energy of the reading. But then from there, I will typically go into the tarot cards to get a more detailed type of reading, get more information to help my sitter.
That makes sense. And originally I had gotten the oracle deck because I was too afraid of tarot.
Mm-hmm.
I still thought there was something wrong with it.
Yeah, yeah. And an interesting thing is, so I was watching a docu-series about tarot cards on Gaia, and she talks about how it actually follows very closely to the Kabbalah and the ancient Judaism religion.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually, it used to be used by some of the like leaders in the ancient Judaism.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then when Christianity came in and kind of overhauled things, it was one of the things that was taken out because there was some of the information from the ancient text that was removed. And so that was one of the things that they removed and said was no longer, like, it was bad and it wasn't allowed because they didn't understand it.
That's really interesting.
But if you look at the major arcana, it actually follows the, gosh, what were they called? Oh my goodness. Like the letters in the Kabbalah or something like that. Like there's like, she had like letters I remember on the show, and each card matched up to one of those Hebraic letters.
Oh.
Yeah.
We'll have to look that up. I'd love to learn more about that. But oh yes, what the tarot, what I've come to appreciate with tarot is all the momentum behind it of the decades of usage, transformation, and energy that is in those decks because it's been used for a long time for readings, and all the cards carry a specific historical, more ancient meaning than the oracle cards, but they also have the twist that maybe a designer has put on them. So really have that appreciation of the spiritual momentum that is in that tool now that I'm not afraid of it.
Right? Yes. So what deck was your first deck?
Oh man, I can't remember.
Do you remember what it was called?
No, I'd have to go get it.
How many decks do you have now?
Oh, I have like probably 10 now.
Right? I think I am somewhere in the same neighborhood, and I have 9 more decks coming in the mail that I ordered that are like
9?
Lost somewhere in transit. They were on sale. Clearance, you know? Yes,
you can
9.
never have too many decks. One thing you'll realize...
One of them is a gift, okay? One of them's not for me.
Okay. One thing you'll realize is once you get into reading, you always want more decks.
You get bored.
It becomes another item of collection. But what I learned with Anna was to connect with your cards. That's what the first thing she taught me is take some time, hold your cards in your hands, blow on them,
your life force energy.
Look at the pictures. Yes, especially with the oracle cards, because you have to interpret them.
Yes.
And I also feel like our spirit guides will talk to us in the language that we have made up or that we understand.
Yeah.
So if we believe a card has a certain meaning through our connection with it, they will use that. So if I see a lotus and it's reminiscent of an experience that I had maybe at a yoga studio, and I had a certain feeling like of joy during that time, when my guide wants me to speak of joy, that card's going to come up.
Right.
But it could be a totally different reference for someone else.
Yeah.
And that's where the connection with the cards
absolutely
comes in.
And using your intuition to read what you're seeing unfold before you. Because, like, for me, for instance, one of the cards in the tarot deck, the Four of Wands, every time I see it, for some reason, I always think marriage. I always think union.
Yeah.
Either a proposal of marriage or like an actual marriage. I don't know why, but that just has always been like the first feeling that comes to me. And that's not actually, excuse me, the first go-to translation of that card. The first go-to translation has to do with like hard work and like laying a firm foundation, which in any marriage like you would want to do. But for some reason, to me, when I see it, like more often than not, every now and then I'll get that message of like firm foundation, but more often than not, I think marriage.
So maybe that's going to be used. It's
Yeah.
going to come out when you're doing readings.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to step back a little bit because we talked about connecting with the cards, using your intuition. So really, there's different ways of reading the cards, and one of them is shuffling them, taking what comes out, what falls out, and actually just looking up, either if your oracle cards, looking at the book to see what it means, or if you have a tarot deck, you can Google what the card means and sort of make sense of it.
Yeah.
And that's like a first basic step, but what we're talking about is beyond that, beyond the book and beyond the internet, meaning is actually meditating and connecting to the card itself, but also to maybe your own guide or a past loved one from the person you're reading or the person you're reading and themselves, to interpret the image and the meaning.
Yeah, what's coming to you, what message is coming through your channel that you've opened.
So it's also, there's like a type of channeling or mediumship or psychic.
I feel like there is. Honestly, I feel like whenever I go into a reading, I'm opening myself up as a channel to receive those messages. And I mean, the cards are just a tool for you to read. So kind of like when you go in and you read a letter to somebody, it's a message that you could get orally, for like it could come through you orally, but for whatever reason you're reading the cards instead. And I like, so you touched on like ways of shuffling. So there's several ways that people shuffle as well and choose the cards too. I've seen where some people will just shuffle. They might even shuffle it like they would a regular deck of cards, which some people are like, oh my gosh, you don't do that. And other people are like, what's the big deal? And then you just like, you cut the deck and then you just start from there and you pull the cards off and trust that the cards that need to come out are right on top. I've also seen, like you mentioned, where people are shuffling and whatever cards fall out, those are the cards that come into the reading, not the ones that stay in your hand. And then the way that I do it is I pick the cards out intuitively. So I've seen people where they will splay them out on a table and they'll just pick them out from the lineup. Or like for me, I just kind of go through the cards in my hand and I wait till I have like this tingly feeling, and that to me means that one needs to come out.
That makes
So there's
sense.
several ways that you can even pull cards to put out in your spread, just at the very beginning, like starting at the very beginning.
Yeah, and I've also had a reading where someone made me split the deck, and they took the card where I split the deck.
Oh yeah, and then only drew from that pile.
Yes. So
I have seen that too.
But
and really, you just gotta kind of like try all of them and see what feels right to you. You know? Yeah.
And then I think it's important. I think it also is important to set an intent when you're pulling the cards or before you pull it, especially if you have a specific question. And especially if you have a certain layout, like so the Celtic cross.
Yeah.
There's different interpretations of where you put what. Yeah. So I say out loud, okay, this card represents the current situation.
Yeah.
And then I pull it, and then I place it in the position where I usually put it. So I set that intent before of what I'm pulling, where it's gonna go, and I've learned that recently. So it's helpful to go in saying.
Well, it's almost like communicating to your guides, like, okay, this is how I'm gonna read this card, you know. So this card needs to be indicative of this. Yeah, this card needs to answer this question or this situation that I'm reading.
So, and there's also past, present, and future is a very common one.
3 card spreads.
3 cards.
You could do single card pulls, 2 card pulls, Celtic cross you mentioned, And there's like the full Celtic cross, or there's like the abbreviated Celtic cross too. So like you have just the cross for like the abbreviated one, or the full one actually will have the lineup on the side too. So the lineup on the side kind of goes even a little bit deeper than just the initial cross. And then I kind of like, so some people use one card for hopes and fears. I started pulling a card for hopes and a card for fears because I feel like they're two different things. So they should have two different cards to represent them. So mine's a little bit modified. And then, of course, if you go on Pinterest, lots of people have come up with their own spreads that you can look up and you can start to master. Like, there's one that I found that works really nice for me that I'm able to interpret really well regarding like the future month, like the next month ahead.
Oh.
So it's like a look at the month ahead or something like that, I think it's called. But it works really, really well for me in being able to tell them. And now I've started to notice just recently that when I put the cards out, I'll go through and I'll initially say like, this is what this is representing. This is, this is your past, this is your present, this is your future. But I'll start to see other cards kind of come together. And so it's like, even though this is in your consciousness and this is down in how the world is affecting your situation, this might be the King of Cups and this is the Queen of Cups, and those jump out to me together.
So you get an interpretation
and so it's
just
like,
by looking at it and having an association, a spontaneous association.
Yeah, where I feel like two cards need to come together and that they have their own message to say because they're both in the spread together.
So how do you know when something, what does it mean if something is reversed? Because a lot of people think it's bad. What does it mean? How do you know if something's supposed to be reversed? Because a lot of people say it falls like that. That means it's upside down and it has a different meaning. So how do you interpret?
So I have decks where I read in reverse and decks where I don't read in reverse. And like my guides know it. So if a card happens to get turned around, then either I take it as this needs to be read reversed, or I'm like, I'm not reading that in reverse because this isn't my reversal deck. Because there are some situations where like each card in a tarot deck, Oracle, most of the time it doesn't matter. Occasionally I've seen where they'll have an interpretation for if the card comes out reversed in Oracle, but a lot of the times it doesn't matter if it's reversed or not reversed. It's not always a negative thing in tarot though if it's reversed. There's some cards that when they're reversed, it's not bad, it's just a little different, right? So I have a deck where I will shuffle it and I'll turn them and I'll like do all like different ways of shuffling so that I purposely get reversals in there. So then as I go through, I'm not going to know what's reversed and what's not reversed. And I just pull the card. And then my other decks, like I said, like I make sure they're all forward. So if something accidentally gets turned around, I'm like, okay, either that was meant to be reversed for a reason, and I'll usually feel it. Like I'll try to turn it around and they'll still be like, no, this is the message that's coming. Reversals are a little more difficult, and honestly, I've not spent a lot of time really memorizing reversals because I read intuitively anyway. So either way, I'm going to go with what the card says. And also, for every positive in the deck, there's an alternate negative, or not even so much negative, but opposition to it.
So, for example, for me, the King of Cups upright is this is a tarot card, is your kind of your ideal, abundant, kind of giving, maybe older gentleman. But reversed, to me, it's someone who is not dependable, capricious, maybe greedy, like takes rather than gives. So that would be an example of.
So if you weren't looking at reversals, then maybe the devil might come out, or the fool might come out instead of the King of Cups.
That makes sense.
Or the Page of Cups could come out, because the pages also can represent the pages and the knights. The pages are more messengers, I guess, now that I think about it. But the knights can represent a more immature energy of the King of Cups. Like something that's still, whenever I see a knight, the first thing that pops into my mind is like, this is your typical adolescent boy who is just like living life and doesn't have a care for what consequences he has.
That is so much different than how I feel about knights. For me, it's like they've made their sacrifice and dedication to their queen and they're gonna fight for her.
Yeah, no, that's not how I read them. The Knight of Swords, I think it is, if I remember right. He's like he's like that impatient, like I want to get it done. I want to go do it now. I don't want to wait. Mommy, give it to me now. Mommy, give it to me now. Like, so when I see it, I'm like, you need to be patient. You need to
be
wait. All good things come to all that wait. And so yeah, no, that's not how I see knights. But like the Knight of Cups can also be like that knight in shining armor who's coming in to save you. So I guess like it's not always, but at the same time, like you typically would think of a knight in shining armor as being a younger male who is just going to rush into something without thinking it through, whereas a wiser man would take time to like come up with a plan and think it through, and then come in and seize the day.
Should we try and read each other and explain what we're doing then?
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to start with the Forest Fae for Kira here. I'm going to read her. And this does not have a book, and I really love this deck. So,
very pretty.
I tap it 3 times.
Yes, very important to clear the energy from the last person.
And I'm going to give it to Kira, and she's going to hold it in her hands.
So this is another thing that's very controversial. Some people do not let other people touch their decks.
Oh, really?
Some people do not want them putting their energy into their decks because they want their decks to only have their own energy.
See, I want Kira's energy to be in the deck because it's her question.
Right? And then other people will purposely like make them like hold the deck like you are. Okay, what question?
You're only getting like 1 or 2 cards, so don't be too complex.
No, I'm got it. I know my question.
Okay. All right. And now I'm just shuffling, and this one, so it didn't jump out, but it like popped upside down. Whoops. And I'm pretty sure.
Oh, there you go. You got 2 more. I got 3 cards.
2 more. She got 3 cards, and they're all green.
Wow.
All of the cards are green.
They're different colors.
They're like really like these. There's not dominant. I guess a lot of them are green, but this one is really green. What you got? So already green is like to me love, heart chakra. I connect colors to the chakras a lot. It's also nature. And the first one is the fairy harper, and it's music. And find the words to long forgotten songs and dance to the music in your soul. That's a cute one. The next one, the green maid. The green fae speak to you. Let them guide you to safety. The old one, the ancestor call. Seek their wisdom. So what pops out to me is there's a harp. There's the word someone speaking to you, and ancestors. I really see listening as being a big factor, listening in silence. But it's like you're meant to receive a wise but gentle message from people who have your best interest at heart and care about you. When I'm looking at these cards, I almost feel like you're ready to be contacted in a way by certain, which makes sense for you because you are a medium as well, but you are ready to be contacted maybe by beings you haven't previously spoken to, that are different. And with this song, I'm really getting a sense of not taking it too seriously, of kind of receiving the message gently, and with an element of fun, because even though it could be a strange message, it's meant to be soft and fun and light, and that's how it's going to come to you. Is this completely off of your question, or what was your question?
No, so I was asking if the partnerships that I have beginning will be bountiful or will be, profitable and abundant in the new year. Like if they will be for my better. And the so one of the partnerships I'm starting is with an older group of people and a younger group of people, through university. And so I found it to be like a message of like, yes, we are guiding you to those who have the knowledge already, and you need to be open to receiving that knowledge and have fun with it, and don't take it to, because I'm very like, it's very out of my comfort zone. And so I'm a little apprehensive, a little nervous about it, and it's very, it's just not along the lines of anything I've done, which is why I have to do it.
Oh, and it's interesting that we have the old one as a card in here, and you mentioned speaking with maybe more older clients.
Yes. It's working with veterans. Some of them are going to be older, some of them are going to be younger. But my contact so far is a gentleman who is older than me, who has a lot of wisdom and is willing to help me. And so I almost feel like my ancestors are guiding me there.
Yes.
And that was what I saw in the card. The very first thing was how two of them seem to talk about ancestors in a way.
They do.
You know?
I think the green fae and the old one, I think they're all a little bit connected to ancestors.
Yeah. So I was very excited by that reading. I'm like, okay, all right. So I'm going to pick up the tarot card deck then, since you did the oracle card deck.
I gotta be careful what I ask.
And I typically do not have them hold them. I mean, it's not that I don't want you putting energy into it. I'm really not worried about that, but I just don't feel like I need to connect. I don't feel like I need that to be able to connect to your energy. I feel like simply by me reaching through my spirit guides to your spirit guides that I can connect very easily. Typically, all I ask for is like a real name, because when you read online, you never know if you get a real name. And I've had it happen where I was using a fake alias and I did not get a clear and accurate message because
your name
that
has
wasn't their actual name. Yeah, our name holds a vibration. We are actually, if you study numerology, which this episode is not about numerology, but if you study numerology, even your name given to you was given to you for a specific purpose.
And I've been told there's been various mediums that ask me for my full name, or my given name, or especially Akashic record readers.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, there's a reason why we got the name we did. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So, are you asking your questions? What is your question?
It's a very general question.
Okay. Because I'm shuffling. I have one card fall out already. It is a king, but not your favorite king.
It's not my favorite king.
So I am asking my spirit guides. That's too many that got flipped around. These are very small cards. I'm not used to them. I'm asking my spirit guides to connect to Marguerite's spirit guides in answer to the question that she has. The general question, which she has not shared.
I'm asking it in my head intently right now. So.
Okay, and then I choose my cards intuitively, like I said, so I'm just going to kind of roll through the deck. We did have one fall out, which I will take. And whenever I feel like a card needs to come out, I'm going to pull it. And again, for me, it's just like a sensation that comes up through my thumb, because my thumb is touching the top of the card. And so when I feel that sensation, I know that that card needs to come out. And I'm not doing a specific spread. So I'm just going to go through them one time this time and look and see what I got. Oh, look, that's not even supposed to be in that. I wonder why. I guess we only needed 2 cards. I pulled like the author card explaining about the author of them. Okay. So it's left with 2 cards here. We have the 5 of Pentacles reversed and the King of Pentacles, which to me feels like it's saying you're no longer going to be left out in the cold. You're no longer going to be on your own. You're now the one in charge. You've gone from being at the very bottom of the totem pole to at the very top. Like you are from, beginner to master is where you're at now. And because it's Pentacles, it's a very grounding feeling. It's a very earthy feeling, which I know you're a Virgo, so that's your earth
very
there.
much.
The King of Pentacles also is really good about making good deals financially that are going to be very profitable and rewarding to him long term. So, what this represents is definitely something that's going to be very abundant and rewarding to you. I have hiding at the bottom because I do like to look always at the bottom and see what's there, because to me that represents something that we don't know yet.
What is it?
We find the Six of Cups.
What is that?
So it's
like
it's two little kids in this
Yeah.
deck. Now the deck that I like to use has like actually a mother and a daughter, but what it represents is being very generous and very giving and nurturing.
Aww.
They're nurturing and they're taking care of the flowers, and then the boy is giving flowers to the girl. And so it's reminding you that even though you're in this position where you are able to make a lot of money and be very abundant and profitable, that you should always maintain that giving nature that you have. And remember that the kindness and the nurturing that comes with that.
That's a very awesome interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
My question was about a person and how should I approach this situation, which the cards did reveal, but your interpretation, your general interpretation to me was also accurate. So
okay, there we go. There we go.
You can ask your clients what they want to know about our clients, even your friends. You don't have to have clients at first. You can do it for your friends.
Yeah, I started out doing it for my friends. Actually, I did it for myself only, and I didn't tell anybody else I was learning for about the first year and a half before I started doing it for my friends. And then it was another year before I actually started like charging and taking clients.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to do amongst friends, I think. And it's a fun way, I think, to start developing intuition while having a support. Because it's really hard to jump into mediumship or psychic abilities. But with cards, it gives you something to kind of start with and then lean into your interpretation and intuition. So
yeah, absolutely. And it really takes time to kind of hear the messages. Like, you can't just go through the cards 2-3 times and like expect to know what everything's going to mean. It takes time to develop that skill, just as it does with any other skill. You know, if you were doing woodworking or painting or, you know, any other hobby like that, or even like a job. I mean, when I went into hair, it took me a couple of times to get it right, you know? Like, it's just like with anything where you're going to get better and better the more you do it over time. For sure. And then when you get to the point where you're getting really detailed, accurate messages that you're able to give your client, to me, I always tell my clients, I'm just here to give you validation for what you already know deep within, but you're maybe too afraid to embrace.
Yes.
Or too afraid to speak out loud to yourself.
Yes, I'm very cautious as a reader. When you're reading people professionally, I've learned to word things a certain way because I never want to tell someone how to feel or what to do, what decision to make, but I do want to support what they are already leaning towards or thinking and give them some type of validation. So I will ask questions, and I think it's perfectly okay to ask questions. You're a reader, a card reader. You're not there to guess everything. You're there to give them validation and support. So
see, and I like to get about 4 or 5 things out that resonate with the person before. So I tell them, like, you know, like, you can tell me your question. Try to keep it somewhat general, not super like detailed. Like, will William Nancy Wright ask me out on Saturday? Like, come on now. I'm not here for that. But I tell them, like, you know, just give me kind of a direction that you're wanting to go so I know how I'm reading the cards. Because, I mean, even if I have a bunch of Wands and Pentacles pop out and you want to know about love, I can usually pull a message from those too. I might pull a few more cards to see if some cups or something fall out too. But, I mean, I can usually get a message from that. And then I like to just wait because I don't want to feel like I'm telling them what they've just told me.
Exactly. And yes, so, you can pull supporting cards. You mentioned pulling out more cards. So if there's a card that doesn't completely make sense, I'll pull other cards to say, help me understand this particular card. What, you know, maybe the card is about a situation, and if you want to know what is kind of underlying or beneath or behind it. pull
And I
some
will
playing cards.
sometimes ask, like if there's a card that's in a specific spot, so like one per sitter, the card was a card of heartbreak and it was in her hopes. I'm like, why would you be hoping for heartbreak? And then she revealed to me that she was in the midst of a divorce, which was going to be for the better,
Oh.
because it wasn't a great situation to be in. I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
That
Like,
does make
yes,
sense.
you would want to. Yep, okay. So
Yeah.
I do ask some questions in that way where it's like, I don't understand why they're telling me this in this spot. I usually try to interpret it first.
And I think it's important to not, but I do think it's important not put too much pressure on ourselves, even though we want so badly to give them, to show that we are competent, and to show and to give them details that they haven't told us. To me, what I found is when I pull the cards, there's images in the cards and there's details in the cards that the person sees, and it immediately speaks to them, even if I don't understand it.
Yes.
And I've seen it happen when other people have read me. One time, a person pulled a spread on me, and it was about joy. And she couldn't find any other meaning, but I knew exactly what it meant.
Yeah.
And she was a little perplexed, but
Yeah.
I knew what it meant.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's a lot.
Because you already know what's going on in your life.
I already know what's going on, and already spoke
Yeah.
to me, and she felt like she needed to give me more explanation, but I said, no, thank you. I understand. And so you may pull a card even with an image, I don't know, with an iris, and the iris has a particular meaning to that person because maybe their deceased father had an iris garden. You know, it's so I would say go with the flow also, and
see what stands out to you
it will
and
stand
how
out.
it makes you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've had several cards where one of the little tiny things in the background, like I just fixated on it. And this don't matter over here. Like we need to talk about this.
What do you do to read for yourself? I've had times personally where I'm desperate to find out an answer. I keep pulling cards.
Me too.
So what do you do?
I think for me, I had to remind myself that there are some answers that I'm not ready to receive.
Mm-hmm.
And wanting something so badly can influence the energy in your cards. Typically what I do is I go to another reader who knows nothing about my life and I ask them to do a card reading for me. Mm-hmm. Or who knows very, very little about my life to pull a card for me. And I'll try to pull back my energy beforehand so that they're not just reading my energy, they're actually reading the cards. Because I will get that with some people who are eager for a response too. I'll read their energy and that will affect the reading in the cards.
So you're reading what they want to happen, but not actually what the cards
what they
are
want
trying
to hear. Yes. Yes. You know, and then sometimes you just have to be like, all right, I give it to God and I'm done and I'm gonna change course. Because we get fixated on things like love or money or job. We get so fixated on it.
Am I going to get this job, or is this person going to be with me? Or I also remind myself that sometimes you're here to go through the experience, and knowing outcomes would prevent you from actually going through the
experiencing it. Yes. So if you're drawn to cards, definitely pick out a deck for yourself. Yeah. Whichever one calls to you. And, you know, that deck that calls to you might come 4 or 5 decks down the line, because that happened to me too. They do also say that decks that are gifted to you typically are meant to be in your hand, and you will connect to them stronger as well.
But don't put too much pressure on yourself. It's important to learn and to have a method, I think, if you're going to go read for other people.
Yes.
Because on your off days, you already know what to do. You just follow your method. But it's also important to not put pressure on yourself. Start by just simply looking at the pictures and picking out what you feel drawn to.
Yeah, and really just like holding them, putting your energy into them. I know I've heard where some people recommend taking one card out for the day and carrying that with you all day, and like kind of thinking on that card, meditating on that card. Because not only is that card picking up your energy throughout the day, but you're able to look at the card and see how it applies to your day. So like maybe you pulled the Empress, and that whole day everything you touched turned to gold, right? Because the Empress is all about fertility and abundance, and so it's like you go to pay for your coffee and somebody's already bought it for you, and then you get to work and somebody brought donuts for work. I don't know. Like these things just manifest and you have a purely abundant day.
The manifestation, that's such a good idea, especially I think oracle cards some of them are written in such an artistic and thoughtful way that I think even just carrying around the energy of that card and reading that sort of as a devotional almost would be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it could be like your mantra for the day, your devotional for the day. Yeah.
To me, the cards are their exercise also in knowing, learning, and trusting yourself. Because if you might be sitting there at first saying, I don't know what I'm drawn to, I don't know what to pick, and that's meaning that you need to get in touch with what you actually feel. And that's a big part of card reading. Getting in touch with how does that card make you feel? What are you drawn to?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us for another episode on Knots of Ariadne. If you are interested in Reiki services with Marguerite, you can find her at
Marguerite de la Mer on Instagram and Facebook. I have a Linktree. You can come and book with me. So remote or in person in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yes, and Reiki.
Right now, the service that I'm offering online is energy healing, but you can ask for reading. I will give you a reading as well.
Yeah. And you can find me at outofasheslc.com as Out of Ashes Life Coaching. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. And I do offer coaching, Reiki, everything remote, or if you're here in Omaha, Nebraska, I also have an office where I see clients. And you can book with me either by messaging me directly or through my website.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone. Have a good day.
Yes, day, evening, morning, whenever you're listening to this.
Thanks for joining us.